Hello and welcome to another segment of Elder Abuse Awareness Virtual Coalition. My name is Elisa Gwilliam, and today I have the pleasure of talking to the Director of the Orange County Office of the Aging, Anne-Marie Maglione, and Professor of Psychology and Director of the Center of Aging and Disability Policy at Mount St. Mary College, Dr. Larry Force. And as you can see, we have most of the people you've been sharing some time with. We have so many of us here tonight. And so I just wanted to really begin today by acknowledging that today is National Elder Abuse Awareness Day. And it really kind of commemorates so many of the topics that we've talked about up until now. So Anne-Marie, do you want to start us off?
Yeah. They started recognizing June 15th as World Elder Abuse Awareness Day in '06. And it really came from that we realized that this is an epidemic and it keeps growing and growing. And the only way to really eradicate things is to educate and bring awareness to it. And that's exactly what we're doing with this whole series. And this was created out of a need during a pandemic when we couldn't reach older adults. So we decided that we would come to them, and we pulled together the best of the best. And I'm so honored and pleased to be part of this with all of you, much smarter people than I am. And together, we're going to put an end to this. And each person here plays a really unique role. So I'm delighted to be here, and I look forward to just keep doing this until one day we're going to say this is the last one because we don't need to do this anymore. So thank you.
Well, I just like to say I'm getting disconnected and I'm coming back on, so I hope that it's not too fragmented on my part, but I appreciate so much, Alyssa, you being able to host this, but I'm in transit right now, so if I get disconnected, I'll call back. But look, the reality is that we never expected to be here so quickly. We started off, I still have the text that I sent Tim and Anne-Marie on April the 1st when I said, I want to talk with you about, this platform that we're using in the proactive caring, and it's working out so well. And they said, let's go. And we had that conversation with Alyssa and with Dr. Jerry Abatiello, and 12 days later, we were up and running. And now we're in, the 10th episode of this. And, the other thing that we're pleased to announce, and Anne-Marie will do that later, is about season 2 and what our intent is. Anne-Marie and I were talking a little bit tonight before we came on, and one of the things that we know that we're going to do next year, and we'll talk more about that, are specialized groups. Veterans, nursing home residents, families with persons with special needs. But we also need to talk more, I think, about the self-neglect, which we really haven't talked about, for this. I mean, Anne-Marie, through your contact, having Greg Olson come on the second was unbelievable. And then through your contact, having Steve Newhouse and the medical director come on, unbelievable. And Tim, can talk a little bit about the acknowledgement or recognition or inquiry that he received from a national group. So not only are we doing it locally, but we're doing it statewide and nationally. And this is the day that I think that we all stop and pause, because it is an acknowledgement of World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. And what better day for us to be able to, give voice to this. And the friends and colleagues that, have worked with this, what, I made a mistake in just identifying you. It's not friends and colleagues, it's friends, because of the fact that all of you have been just incredible to work with. So thank you.
Thank you.
Not sure I'm able to be heard. So I'm going to call back. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm not sure we can hear you. So you're gonna call in, and we'll move on a little bit. So,
perfect. Perfect. I'll do that.
Tim, do you want to talk a little bit about your role? You and I work so closely together with Adult Protective Services, and I know whenever we get a case through our New York Connects at Office for the Aging, we send it to you. And, do you want to talk a little bit about how you handle things?
Can't hear him.
Can you hear me, Tim?
Should be working now. Good. Whoa. What was that? 1970s rock and roll.
That's so dramatic, Tim. Do it again.
We're going to
Now
give
we
Tim
can't
a
hear
chance to straighten that out and come back.
I'm back.
Absolutely.
But it's still not correct.
Yeah, it looks like you're on 2 devices, maybe.
He is.
Yeah.
Oh.
Speak again. We'll wait for him to get that turned out. But
Well,
Anne-Marie.
In the meantime, Sandy, do you want to talk a little bit about your role as an elder care attorney? I think it takes a whole group of people to really address this, and everybody comes to it from a different lens. So maybe you can share a little bit about what you do.
Sure. As an elder law attorney, I often will be contacted by seniors, by their families, sometimes even by their friends, in situations where they feel there might be abuse going on. And it sort of covers the entire spectrum of abuse. Sometimes it's because their children or friends, neighbors suspect physical abuse simply by observation. You see someone who might have bruises, might even look scared, just when they used to be very very brave in their appearance. I've had families come to me when they think another family member is taking advantage financially, like stealing money, forging checks, convincing a senior, well, if you don't pay for this, if you don't give me money, if you don't support me, you're going to end up in a nursing home. This seems to be the thing that scares everyone. And I've heard that so much. Sometimes it's even, I'm going to attack your pet. And these are trusted people in your family who all of a sudden feels it's okay to take advantage. Emotional abuse is all of the spectrum, and one of the things that Tim had talked about, and hopefully we'll hear from him again, is that self abuse, which I don't see much of, okay, because there's no one there to observe that and come to me. I probably wouldn't be that person. But then there's the matter of, and what do I do? Okay, all right, I can look at legal rights, because everyone has rights to make their own decisions, to be free from abuse. All of that, unless someone goes to court, someone else goes to court and becomes their guardian. And this is a thing that I see a lot. Children will come in and say, well, how do we force my dad to stop driving? How do we force my dad, my mom to be more careful with her her finances. I had someone come in. They're applying for Medicaid. The mother's IRA was gone. Okay, and basically they accused the daughter of taking the money or mother giving it to her. Actually, it turned out the mother was spending it on her boyfriend. So, you know, and you have those rights. We all make mistakes throughout our life. We all do stupid things and things that might be harmful to ourselves. We take risks, we do all this stuff. But it seems like when someone is older, everyone thinks, well, they shouldn't be doing that, and we better do something about it. And I'm a very big advocate of seniors having rights, regardless of how it might appear to us. So come from it from all different angles.
Yeah, thank you, Sandy. I appreciate that. And, you know, while we're waiting for Dr. Forskia back, Sharon, do you want to kind of share a little bit about what your role has been in this? Because you've had a really large role in this also. I think you're on mute.
Now I'm unmuted. The elder multidisciplinary team basically looks at it from all angles. As Sandy was saying, it takes a lot of different perspectives to evaluate, determine an elder abuse case. And one of the biggest obstacles, I think, is that people assume that something is abuse when the individual is a knowing, contributing party. They have the right to make their own decisions. You know, if somebody wants to sleep on a mattress and box spring on the floor, because that's what they've done for most of their life, that's their right. If they choose to give a family member or a friend money, that's also their right. What is difficult is determining, especially in the financial domain, whether they're willingly giving it or there are other issues going on. And that's one of the things that the multidisciplinary team takes a look at when the case is referred to them, usually by Adult Protective Services or Office of Victim Services or a bank or any number of different places. For the financial abuse, we have the ability to bring in a forensic accountant and to very thoroughly go through the individual's finances and do some backtracking and determine what is going on. But cases are very hard to prosecute, especially when it's a family member. It becomes really difficult. Also, because of banking laws, it becomes difficult sometimes to get the information. There are any number of obstacles that get in the way when you're talking about financial abuse in actually resolving the issue. Would you agree, Sandy? You're muted.
Still muted.
Boss has to unmute me.
You're good now.
Okay. Now, what was the question? Sorry.
I
Oh,
said
yes, family members. Yeah, that's a biggie because, you know, parents don't want their kids to go to jail. That's how they've lived their whole life. You know, we want to protect our kids. We want to protect our kids. You know, when you have a kid, all of a sudden you're not the center of your own world. It's the kids. And for you to say, okay, what your son did to you by going into your bank account and taking all your money, that's a crime. It's a felony. We need to turn this over to the police, turn it over to the DA. They don't want that. I've had big arguments amongst family members about this. But the fact is, as I said before, the parent can make up their own minds. They can say, I don't care what he did, I'm not prosecuting. And without that person to the victim to want to push that case, district attorney's office is not going to go for it. And so everyone else in the family might be frustrated. And I started my legal career as a prosecutor in Brooklyn, and I like to explain to people, well, if we don't stop him now, he's just going to do it to someone else, and he's not necessarily going to jail, maybe probation, maybe this, that. They don't want him to have a criminal record, any of that. So it's a tough one. It's not a winning argument.
I just want to say one thing, that as I'm listening to all of you speak, I'm really struck by. I'm here. Okay, I'm calling in on the phone.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm on an Amtrak. But I'm really struck by the fact that the different perspectives that we bring to the table. I mean, we're looking at the same behavior, but we're looking at it from our own experiences, skills, training. And I think that's the real value out of this group. I mean, I think the one message that we wanted to be able to get across is throughout all of this, even though people were in isolation, and some may still be. And even when COVID is over, some may feel that they're still in isolation. The reality is that they don't have to do it alone. And we've put together, and I'll use your words, Sandy, because you did an incredible job with that article about the Army, the powerful, Army. I mean, we're not superheroes, but we're strong allies. Collectively, we can surround somebody and help them, and they don't have to do this alone. And I think that was one of the major accomplishments that we were able to, move forward through this virtual coalition.
Yeah,
Emery, would you agree?
Yeah, I absolutely do agree. And I think that's the strength. And I think there's strength in numbers. Tim, I don't know if you can unmute and get back on, because I think what you have to say is really powerful.
So we are concerned about, it picked me up twice.
You might be signed in 2 places. That's why there's that reverberation.
Let me sign out.
Rid of one. You're all good. You're good.
Okay,
to go.
Okay.
Now you're good.
Start talking.
So Adult Protective Services is designed to work with adults who are impaired, whether they are alone and isolated or within a family group. So the challenge is that they're impaired, which makes them unable to speak up for themselves. They have to trust other people. So they're easily manipulated. Their short-term memory and long-term memory are impaired. They have a physical impairment, and they cannot take care of themselves. Our penal law system responds to people who can complain, but we have to think about the fact that adult abuse and neglect in and of itself is not a crime in New York. The penal law relies on you complaining to law enforcement or the district attorney about crimes that might be perpetrated against you. Larcenies, coercion, theft of personal property, and there's forgeries, use and abuse of debit cards or credit cards, all rely on the fact that you are able to complain for yourself. And APS is designed to try and work with those people who can no longer complain. However, the penal system still wants you to complain and take action. And unfortunately, the APS really can't go after the bad guys. What APS can do is to take a look at a civil route and at the guardianship route to see whether we can stop the bad stuff from happening and forge a way ahead to protect the person or protect the assets of the person, so they can, live a more fruitful, dignified, or at least, a self-reflective way of life. So it is an ongoing challenge to work with people who are impaired, or to work with people who are all alone and don't know to reach out to the Office of the Aging or to a Sandy Altman as an elder care lawyer, or to make themselves known to Adult Protective Services. So that's a challenge too. So social isolation, the last of the family, living in a real rural area, being somewhat paranoid about the government, all those things contribute to a person's inability to take care of themselves. And the hardest thing for us to do is to step in the middle of somebody's life and try and figure out where they wanted to go or what path they were on. And that's really difficult because we don't want to presume that we know what a person's path was or what their thoughts are about themselves.
You know, and as you were talking, you know, and look, it took us a very short period of time to assemble the team of the people that we wanted to be surrounded by. So you, Anne Marie, and I spoke. We bring in Alyssa, you know, to manage this, coordinate it. We talk about Sharon. We talk about Sandy. We talk about Dr. Abatiello. And you know, many of us, especially you, Tim, and you, Anne Marie, you know, you're in the agency world, reaching out and also receiving people's voice and concerns. And then we bring Dr. Abatiello to the table. And the same thing with Sharon, reaching out from the service, you know, from being the executive director of Jewish Family Services. But then we bring Dr. Abatiello to the table. And her whole strength and focus is not really reaching out, but going in. And Jerry, you know, Anne Marie has done a nice job of weaving together this discussion and, you know, asking Sharon, you know, what is it that she feels, you know, from the perspective of the accomplishment. But how about from you? I mean, not only did we come to you and bring you onto a podcast, but you also put together those quiet, thoughtful moments of, you know, of being able to go within. So maybe you could talk a little bit about what you feel good about as far as the outcome of what collectively we've been able to do.
Well, I'm not actually sure how helpful it is in the overall scheme of life. However, I'm trying to think. I guess it was Freud that said an unexamined life is not a life lived. And you know, the notion of how we get people to look at what's happening seems to be so important, because at one breath they're telling you someone's hurting them and they're taking advantage, and all of our service people are so sensitive to that. How do we help this person? And on the other level, there's this other part that says, you know, maybe I deserve this, maybe you know, if I'm nicer and kinder and all those other things, people will treat me better. It's not a world, in my experience, where your behavior creates new behavior in other people necessarily. But hopefully, as we're talking about all the different aspects, the biological, which has to do with, are they getting their treatment and their medications, getting the doctor, and who's doing that and who should be doing that? You know, how does the person who's an elder, how have they lived their life with the people around them? And sometimes I wonder, even what we call abuse, is it in fact a natural evolution? I don't know, and I don't mean to be negative, but I think if we invite people at least to think about what's happening, and are they okay with it, and help people address this in a way saying that you have another choice. I'm hoping that will offer something. And even just to say, how did you make it through other events? How did you make it through? And what did you teach your children? And years ago, I remember being called to someone's bedside who was dying, and they said to me they've done nothing their whole life. And when I asked what they saw when they looked into their daughter's eyes, there was this incredible peaceful smile. And when I said to the lady, that's what you put there, it was like a revelation. Nobody thinks about those kinds of things. So I'm hoping this works together with you folks who are so concrete and so aware and know how this plays itself out. And even maybe we change our language in how to address it. You know, is this the way it's always been? Would you like it different? Because we can help you make it different.
Well, when you're saying that, it reminds me of, Tim and Anne-Marie and I being on a stage, in a large auditorium, 500 people being there. And I think Sharon was there also through a sponsorship of her agency, which has always been present. And we were talking about, you have choices here. You can, because one of the things that I would say in those public forums is that after the district attorney went and after the medical group went and, and the St. Luke's Hospital and Dan Mon has just been incredible partners in all of this. One of the things I would say is we need to teach, you want to stop elder abuse, you need to teach people to fight back. But I never meant physical fighting back. And one of the exercises that I would do in the beginning of the presentation is I would ask people to, they're in this auditorium, there's 500 people attending this. Can you please lean over and put your hands, couple your hands behind your neck and lean over and learn how to cower, and feel what it's really like to cower and get really good at it. Because if we don't change, that's what we're all going to be doing. We're going to be cowering. And the whole idea is to be able to, Sandy and I are doing that age loudly thing now, giving voice. The whole idea is to speak up, to be able to empower yourself. But how dare you even think about violating me? I'm not sure we're there yet. And I love what you said because of that whole evolutionary thing. Like people might expect that this is part of that stage, to be, the expectation that you will be abused. And I think one of the things that we can do, and I think one of the things we've successfully planted seeds about, is don't even try that with me. How dare you? Don't even think about it. So I really liked what you said, Jerry. I mean, I think you're really onto something. How do we change the language, the attitudes, the behaviors? Not at 4 o'clock in the afternoon coming out of an emergency room after the police have arrived at your house, but in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, all the way through life. How dare you even think about violating me?
Well, Larry, that's well said, because none of these topics are talked about at the high school or college level.
Right.
So you go to nursing school, you go to social work school, you're going to be a social worker, you're going to be a psychologist. But until you get in the practice of working with impaired adults who are at risk, the idea of them being self-determinant doesn't exist at the educational level. And people do not make plans for themselves. And we find that Adult Protective Services becomes the default agency of all the other practitioners in the counties throughout the state, that if somebody is not living up to someone else's expectations, you call Adult Protective Services. And that we have the magic pill to fix the problem that is perceived by the other source, not by the adult that's referred to us. So Dr. Abbiatello's comments are well spoken. That and I'll say it again. It's really hard to walk in the middle of somebody's life and know what path they're on, and who are we to say otherwise?
Well, I think, you and Anne-Marie and Sharon, in particular, out of this collaboration, this coalition, you're on the receiving end after the event has occurred.
We are
and I think your point,
totally reactive.
right,
Yeah.
right. And I think your point is well taken. And that maybe this is something we can weave into the discussions in season 2 about the preventative factors. I mean, it doesn't start on a Friday afternoon when you're 87 years old. And the event has occurred. It starts much earlier. And your point about the curriculum, I think it's right on target. These social work schools and undergraduate schools, about the preventative factor.
So
Yeah.
I had the opportunity to speak to some of the nursing students at the Mount And they were taken aback and appalled by the description of ABS cases, but they never really thought about conversations with patients over time and what their patient's path was or direction. You know, who and what should speak for them when they no longer can, and can they write their message down now so someone else can
You know,
speak for them.
Yeah.
right,
You know,
Oliver Sacks, go ahead.
one of the things that is problematic is I teach at Marist. I happen to teach an aging course in the BSW program, but there is still such an emphasis on youth in our society that when you ask social work students who they plan on working with, what population they intend to work with, 99% of them say youth. And that's a systematic problem of our society. We are pretty much enmeshed in thinking of seniors as a disposable commodity. You reach a certain point and you're no longer of any value to the society you live in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know, Sandy is correct. So is Larry. People have to begin to age loudly.
Right, right.
You know,
And ageism is the last acceptable ism, and we
I
have to.
know.
And it's so institutional, it's so insidious. But I
Right.
want to go back to what Tim said. There's a neurologist, Oliver Sacks. He writes this book called The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. He's talking about like all these, a couple of these patients that he's worked with, case studies, you know, and individuals dealing with neurological disorders. So I like him. I like his style of writing. So I'm teaching a theories of social casework course, and I figured this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go in and I'm going to take cases that were memorable to me. And each week I'm going to see it in a different case. I realized very quickly by week 3, if I continued on that track to be able to describe to the students what I had witnessed, what all of us have witnessed, these students are going to be running from the field because they were so, as you said, when you were talking to the nursing students, they were horrified, they were petrified, because think about the things collectively that we have seen and witnessed about people abusing others, people abusing themselves. And now we come to 2020, we come to embracing a technological platform, and I think we've done an incredible job of being able to frame out the important issues and also being able to get to people when they cannot assemble because of COVID. Anne-Marie?
And it's just the beginning. As much as I think people are learning, we are also learning. So season 2 is going to be it's going to be building on season 1. We're going to be having a congressman on. We're going to be having a federal aging director on that can really talk nationally about what's going on. And, you know, we're going to have people that are not only caregivers that are burned out and can honestly speak about things, but we're going to be talking about people that have been a victim of abuse and see through their lens what we can learn to prevent that. You know, we're also getting a lot of emails from people, so we know that they're watching us, and we're happy about that. So we're going to try to do a little bit more interactive with that too.
Can you give like you and I talked about this prior to you know, coming online tonight? I mean, I have a couple scenarios. Do you want me to start, or you want to start with some of the scenarios that, please?
You know, I got one from this woman, and she's a 48-year-old woman. She was the youngest of 5, so her mom's a little bit older. Her mom's 87, and her dad's gone. He has dementia, and she doesn't have the nice dementia. You know, there's dementia where you're just really sweet, and then there's dementia where you're not so sweet. And she has the dementia where she's not so sweet, and just really makes her daughter's life a living hell. And in COVID, there's no release. And she, you know, reached out to us to say, help me. you know, I get that she can't help the way she is, but I'm at my last nerve. And I don't want to do anything bad, but I just can't do this anymore. And is there some place I can go? Is there a resource that can help me? And I said, you called the right place. You know, I'm so glad we hooked her up with a counselor. She's doing a support group. We got in touch with Alzheimer's Association. I think that's the wonderful thing about this group that we have, is that we're able to reach out to so many people to help. And, you know, I was also felt that she was really brave. You know, it's not easy to say, you know, I can't stand my ill older mother, you know. She feels guilty about it, but this is a non-judgment area, and if you can't talk about it, again, awareness and education are key. So that was one of the emails that I got that really struck a chord for me.
You know, and I think, you know, building upon that, you know, we've talked about that. I mean, not everything is happy-go-lucky walk down the path. There are some family members that end up providing care for individuals that they were not fond of early on in life, or they've been abused by these individuals.
Right.
And when we talk about elder abuse, you know, the profile that comes up is the 87, 88-year-old person. But the one thing that I think we have to also give voice to is that person that's in their 60s, that's caring for somebody that's in their 80s, and in the process of the care, they're being abused themselves. You know, and I think that, you know, the thing that they need to know is that there are support services, there's compassionate support services out there for individuals. You know, I mean, we never expected that this thing would take off as fast as it did and go as wide as it has. And Tim, for a moment, could you just talk about that national organization that has reached out to you that said, wow? And would you consider, you know, presenting this model at a virtual national conference?
I just texted Anne Marie that
We're
I
just
did.
talking.
And so Alan Lawitz is the Northeast Region Chair for the National Adult Protective Services Association. And if you guys haven't looked at the NAPSA website, please go do so. It is a very strong organization that works diligently behind the scenes to offer trainings and insight into the practice of adult protective services nationwide. So we're lucky to have Alan as the recently retired director of the Bureau of Adult Services at the Office of Children's and Family Services, our Northeast director. He's a very staunch advocate of the goals and missions of adult protective services here in New York and as it exists around the country. He participates very quickly with Deborah Holt-Knight, who is the commissioner of the HRA down in New York City, and some others throughout the Northeast region, which would be New York, Massachusetts, Vermont, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Washington, D.C., Maine, and the U.S. Virgin Islands also has an APS unit. So the reach is pretty broad. So yeah, I can reach out to him. I'm sure he would participate with us. He is well aware of our coalition and these YouTube videos and has shared them with his counterparts throughout the region and nationally. So it's always encouraging of me and of us to participate as much as we can. Depending where the life of this coalition goes, we might want to consider looking at NAPSA and its membership. You know, as a broader.
You know,
Yeah.
that's a great idea. I mean, we ended up in another project, you know, and it's all about connections. You know, we started, you know, with this platform. We knock on the door of my friends Tim and Anne Marie and Jerry and Alyssa, and next thing you know, boom, we're up and running. We received an email. I just want to say this here. We received an email in the other coalition, the program, the proactive thing. Somebody said, we're going to send this out to our 1,200 national affiliate organizations. Who would have thought? Now you're bringing to the table that, you know, this fellow has reached out to you saying, we're aware of what you're all doing, and we'd like to learn more about it. And that's what it's all about. But I just want to say this, because you mentioned about, you know, YouTube, and we made this look easy. But the fact is that there's an infrastructure here that was so sturdy in making this happen. You know, so Danielle, you know, Danielle Maglione, Diana Valentin Miller, you know, these were the go-to people that were able to help us light this up, communicate, and be able to, you know, ignite this on the social media front. So we are all very, very, you know, appreciative of the work the two of you have done. And I think as we bring this to a close, I think, you know, as we started, you know, with a round of applause, I think we have to finish with a round of applause, because Alyssa J. Williams, the founder of the Hudson Valley Healing Center, you made it look so easy. You made it seamless. I mean, even tonight, you know, bringing together this group or cast of characters, because I think we know each other well enough to say cast of characters, and be able to, you know, blend it all together, a tip of the hat from all of us. So before we turn it back over to Alyssa for summary remarks, Anne-Marie?
Thank you. You know, and there's so much more to talk about. And whenever I start, my concern is, are we going to have enough to talk about? And there's so much more that, you know, we really want to talk to her a little bit more intensively with Dr. Ababatiello. I hope I said your name right. You know, that I think next time is going to bring us the perspective of the 85-year-old and how they feel. And I think that's going to be really key, because you have to understand that to move forward. But in light of time, we're going to do that next time. But I do want to say, if you or anyone needs any assistance, please call our New York Connects line, which is our single point of entry. It's 845-615-3710. We can help you, connect you to Adult Protective Services, which I think Tim's going to give his contact information. But if you know, some people are a little bit nervous going that way, call us. We'll walk you through it. Everything is confidential. So, you know, I always say err on the side of caution. Best case scenario, it's nothing. If it is something, we'll address it then. So thank you.
Thanks,
And it's all
Anne-Marie.
confidential.
Yeah.
Yes.
And are any other members of our coalition, would you like to have some summary comments at this point? But again, the major theme is people need to walk away with it. They want to reach out to the public agencies. It's confidential. Jerry, Sharon, Sandy.
The only thing I want to say is,
the one thing I would,
go ahead.
Please, Jerry.
no. The only thing, I think I was seeing an 85-year-old, and I just want to bring it up so that we had somebody from. She said, we're having PTSD, and we need help to know what PTSD is all about. We're being kept in rooms and having our food served, and we're noticing things are happening and we don't have anybody to. And she had asked me to come to her organization to talk about the trauma that leads to bad behavior on people caring for them. So perhaps, like Anne-Marie said, maybe we can kind of broach that topic the next time.
Yeah, I think
Sandy?
one of the things that really impresses me about what this group has done is, this is only the beginning. You know, we opened up a lot of subjects. We opened up a lot of thought, a lot of what I sort of consider first steps, and the fact that at least people know they can reach out to us. It's a huge, huge first step. And I'm really looking forward to what's coming next.
Beautiful. Thank you. And Sharon?
I think right now is probably one of the most difficult times to be an older individual.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're constantly being reminded of the fact that older people are at risk in more ways than one. I mean,
Sure.
we're talking about the health risks that go along with aging and the immune system, but they're also a risk for elder abuse, especially financial elder abuse. There are so many scams out there that just target the elderly. And it's like prime time for scammers.
Yeah.
I agree.
Point well taken.
Yeah.
All right, so I think at this point, on behalf of Anne-Marie and myself and Tim, from germinating this thing, having a discussion about it, Alyssa, we'd like to pass the mantle to you at this point.
Tim, would you give the Adult Protective Service number before we do that?
To reach Adult Protective Services, please call 845-291-2800 or 845-291-4000 and simply ask the county switchboard to speak with someone in Adult Protective Services. There is an APS worker available every day between 9 and 5 to speak to anybody from the community about anything that revolves around elder abuse or self-neglect for any impaired adult.
Well, I don't think we could have done a better job in acknowledging and giving voice to June 15th. I don't think it's accidental or coincidental that our final series, our final session is now we move into series, season 2 is on June 15th, World, Elder Abuse Awareness Day. So Alyssa?
Yeah, thank you, Larry. And thanks for everybody for joining today. You've been listening to the Elder Abuse Awareness Virtual Coalition. If you want to hear this program again or share it with friends, even comment on it, you can do so by logging onto our website, www.elderabuseawarenessvirtualcoalition.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and make sure you sign up for our newsletter while you're on our website. Reach out to the numbers given. They're there for you to use. And whatever you need, leave us an email on our website and we'll make sure somebody gets back to you. So we hope you can join us for season 2 of Elder Abuse Awareness Virtual Coalition.